Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I am naturopath Fiona, co-founder of the Kidney Coach, the Kidney Disease Solution, Kidney Mastery Program, and of course, Genesis, our range of supplements designed and formulated to support those diagnosed with chronic kidney disease. I'm joined again today by one of my favorite people to do podcasts with, and that is the beautiful Stephanie MoDavis. Stephanie has joined the Kidney Coach team as one of our coaches, definitely here to support anyone going through dialysis or on a transplant list, because if you haven't watched any previous podcasts that I've done with Stephanie, I encourage you to do so. She's gone through this journey twice herself. She is very well versed, armed, and educated when it comes to navigating the system and the emotional system, the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being, and looking after yourself when it comes to going through what can be very challenging times. And today, Stephanie is I'm going to let her do most of the talking, but she's going to talk about how you can find empowerment and being empowered when you've been labeled with a disease such as chronic kidney disease, to really how to find your power in amongst that label. So, Stephanie, thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to be here again, Fiona, and I'm excited to share with you this presentation on how labeling us can prove to benefit in certain ways, but also can really hinder our empowerment in a lot of ways. So I love to just be able to bring this 20-year experience full circle. Obviously, everybody's at different stages along their journey, but I think to just have this in hindsight and to be able to receive this knowledge, I believe truly would have been something that would have helped me so profoundly at the start of my journey. So happy to be here and happy to share.
Always happy to have you share your wisdom and knowledge. There's nothing better than first-hand experience when it comes to these things. So please share away and walk us through, how do we find empowerment when we've been diagnosed with something like chronic kidney disease?
Here we go. So today I called this what's in a label? Is there a deeper meaning in our illness experience? Obviously, I think this is really important, or I wouldn't have spent the time to do a whole presentation about it. If you haven't watched any of our previous videos, interviews I've done with Fiona, you might want to look back, because I talk a lot about my experience with this and my personal experience. I was a yoga teacher and really invested in my holistic health prior to my sudden diagnosis of autoimmune disease. And one thing about my disease was that I was mislabeled, and there wasn't a diagnosis for me for close to a year as I was struggling in the beginning stages of my autoimmune disease. I believe that times have shifted since then a bit. We're much more privy to autoimmunity here. It's growing rapidly. But about 20 years when I was diagnosed 20 years ago, it was still a little bit random, and they needed to have a certain amount of criteria present at the same time to be able to give a proper diagnosis. So I had about a year where I knew that there was something wrong with me. And I had gone to about 5 different healthcare providers, and either they didn't know what it was, or they tried to come up with a diagnosis or something that it possibly could be, from osteoarthritis, which is very uncommon for a 21-year-old, to Lyme's disease, to other sorts of conditions, to even just, random anxiety disorder. And, maybe it's my time of the month and I'm just not feeling well and it's something else. So there was a lot of frustration that was building up towards this label. And I'm going to go on here. First, I just want to be very clear, just some definition. A label is a word, phrase, or category used to identify, describe, or classify something or someone. Can be used literal, like a tag, or figurative to describe a person. And when we sit down and really think about it, all of us carry and hold many labels, right? Mother, daughter, teacher, educator, doctor, patient. I mean, there's just so many labels that we carry. And I think we're starting to understand now that some of these labels have limits to how we can express ourselves within that particular container. Some labels are very empowering, and some labels are not so empowering and can be negative. So for me personally, I had this dual perspective of, I knew there was something wrong with me for a year, and I couldn't get a proper diagnosis. So I felt like I was spiraling a little bit. And unbeknownst to me was that there was something within me, probably in my subconscious, that just wanted to be seen and affirmed that there was indeed something wrong with me, and I just wasn't crazy. Because when you're waiting so long, you know, it was like I felt like nobody was, you know, I thought, well, maybe people think I'm faking it. Or maybe because I don't look that sick, people are going to expect the same thing from me if I don't have that label. So there was a lot of confusion in hindsight about what this label was going to do for me and how it was going to eventually limit me as well. So there's something, Fiona, called labeling theory, which I think I think this came out in like 2006, maybe even prior to that. And obviously, we're going to talk about the patient label. So there's a sociological perspective that argues that labels applied to people, especially negative or stigmatizing ones, can significantly influence their self-identity and subsequent behavior, potentially leading to a self-fulfilling prophecy, where the labeled individual conforms to the expectations associated with that label.
Yeah.
So I felt this immediately. I was already not feeling well. And then when I stepped into the healthcare institution, it's organized in a way where the hierarchy is expert, sick person. That's how it's set up. And although in essence, that's partly true, there's a lot of nuance in between just a very binary label, where things can get very muddy. And for me personally, when I got my diagnosis, I felt a simultaneous relief, like, okay, finally I'm being seen. But also I felt, on the other hand, I'm a holistic health practitioner. I'm a yoga teacher. Like now I'm ashamed because I can't even heal myself. Like there was this burden on me because I was a alternative healthcare provider.
Yeah, it's like you failed.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get that one as well. Yeah, I totally know that one. It's tough.
So it was confusing. It was like, I'm finally, somebody finally figured it out. In fact, I was so desperate. I started reading books myself to try to figure out what was wrong with me. I remember very clearly, I picked up the prescription for nutritional healing, the volume that it was on. It's a big, big, thick, holistic health book. And I literally just went page to page. And believe it or not, I believe I assigned and named my own illness before it actually happened. When I got to lupus, I was like, duh, this is definitely what I think I have. And then it was just several weeks after that the butterfly rash presented for me, which is the clear, visible indication for lupus. But it was strange how I was so desperate that I think I actually named it before it was named by them. So yeah, things you don't really think about. But again, that having that mental, psychological, okay, finally I have a diagnosis, but now I also feel like I failed and I'm ashamed of myself with my diagnosis, is not a great way to start on an illness process, right?
No.
So again, I'm just sharing in hindsight. Everybody listening to this call is at a different time and space with their illness and their diagnosis, right? I'm just trying to share some information for people to I'm just trying to encourage people to open their mind a little more broadly. When we first get diagnosed, it can be very, you can feel all of these emotions. And this is what I'm trying to get people to just check in with here. How did you actually feel when you got diagnosed or when you were in the doctor's office? Like really tap into, if you can try to shift out of the survival mode, take a second to reflect right from the start, like, what is this truly making me feel? And start from the beginning to develop a relationship with how you feel about what's going on. Because if you don't do that, pretty much, and very often is what I see, is that if you don't choose to participate in the entire process of your illness and diagnosis, you're going to start to feel overwhelmed by it. And instead of you kind of being in control and walking with your illness as you, it starts to walk you. And you can get a lot of depression and anxiety and a whole bunch of other mental health issues can really start to arise. You know what I mean? So really sit with yourself and just be honest, be fully honest. Doesn't matter what you do, how successful you are, how old you are. Just really ask yourself, how am I really feeling? Let me name it. You know, I'm scared. I feel defeated. I feel embarrassed. I feel angry, uncertain, disappointed in myself, betrayed. I felt very betrayed by God and my own health because I was doing everything right, so to speak, right? So I had all of these emotions, and I didn't acknowledge them. I didn't acknowledge them. I didn't know how to acknowledge them. Nobody ever told me that it was something that maybe was important for me to do. I didn't learn this until later when I had to truly play cleanup with my emotional self after my transplant. So one of the reasons I like to share this material is because, you know, I was on dialysis the first time for close to 6 years before my first transplant. And that was many years of waiting to just feel better.
Wow.
And I got the kidney. When I got the kidney, the hope was, and my surgeon actually said to me, okay, great. You finally got your life back, kid. Go get him. Go live your life. And what happened to me was I actually went into about 5 to 6 years of a very deep emotional cleanup process. I started to feel depressed after my transplant, which I was very confused by that because that was exactly what was not supposed to happen. But I realized I never addressed how I felt about any of this process the whole entire time. I just felt anxious and afraid the whole time. I didn't create a deeper relationship and really acknowledge my feelings to be valued.
Interesting.
Yeah. So this is the other hand, is that I said I felt two different ways, right? There was an upside to my diagnosis and my label too, because I finally felt affirmed. Like, okay, I knew something was wrong with me. Yeah. I knew that you guys like didn't know what you were doing. Like something was wrong with me. I felt relieved. Oh my gosh, I finally know what to do and I can finally start to work through this, right? I felt seen. I felt heard. I felt validated, and I felt a sense of, okay, now I can just surrender into this process because now I know what's going on. And I think that all of those feelings are very natural. And as we proceed, I'll tell you a little more why I think it's important to just really be honest with yourself about how you feel, even if it's a little bit of both of you know, the fear and the affirmation. So what I've come to understand for myself is that there's a lot of psychological underpinnings to physical illness that are trying to literally speak to us, probably even before the diagnosis. But we somehow missed it or weren't intended to see it at that time. But what I've really come to understand is, you know, what happens to you when you accept that role of the patient is really key in your healing journey, in how long your journey of healing takes, of the potential of what your illness could potentially show you about yourself. Right. So I think this is really important for people to start to embrace, is that illness is much more than something physical. And that often there's these underlying, more subtle things that are calling for your attention and your love and your awareness. And if you're just willing to embrace that part of yourself, it's in my belief that our healing and integration from our illness and how we move through it and beyond it can be that much better when we start to allow for these small, subtle nuances of our feelings. So here we go. So illness in the medical model is typically seen as an inevitable struggle, right? If you're diagnosed with kidney disease, it's kind of like people can rally around you. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, this must be so hard for you. Oh my gosh, how do you do this day to day? How can I help? It's just like, it's an inevitable burden. It's seen as a burden. It's seen as a struggle. So I have here, many people accept the notion that living with an illness is inherently difficult and will inevitably lead to emotional turbulence. This belief can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, setting expectations for a life of constant struggle. And this exactly, in fact, in certain kidney groups that I've been a part of, there have been psychologists in the group or psychiatrists in the group who will just straight up say it's completely normal for you to be on multiple psych meds when you're going through this process. And in fact, the one woman actually said, "Don't feel bad about it. No, I'm on them." So as much as I don't want to make taking any sort of psychiatric medication a stigma, because there was a time when I was on dialysis that I actually took a little bit of medicine to help me with my anxiety. But I think it's very dangerous when we don't give an individual the autonomy to try to have the strength to work through something, and we just automatically pigeonhole them as, oh, it's normal to be on psych meds for the rest of your life if you had a transplant. I think that's very dangerous, actually.
Yeah, I agree, because of the subliminal messaging that comes with it.
Yeah, the subliminal message partly is, you can't handle this. You can't handle what's happened to you, right? So yeah, a lot of nuance there. But so there's a prevalent assumption that managing illness, especially mental health conditions, require long-term use of psychiatric medications. And I just said these can be beneficial. Over-reliance on it can sometimes overshadow other important aspects of healing that want to break through. I mean, it's very normal and it's very common that, yes, it can be very helpful in times of crisis. And in certain time, I mean, it's also well known that there can be a numbness, a state of numbness that can sometimes come with, as a side effect, some of these medications, where deeper nuances and realizations almost are just, they just can't make it through to the light of consciousness, because it's, your consciousness is slightly being dulled, so that anxiety or depression isn't rising up as much.
Yeah, very true.
You know, so the idea that living with illness means experiencing extreme ups and downs, often likened to a bipolar emotional roller coaster, is deeply ingrained in our cultural understanding of illness. This metaphor can be limiting and may not accurately represent everyone's experience. So again, I just want to highlight, let's not necessarily assume that because somebody has an illness that they cannot find alternative subjective ways to navigate. I think when our professionals are telling this to us, we're missing the mark.
Yeah, no, I'd agree.
So if we are more technologically advanced and modern medicine is light years ahead of where we were, why are the statistics and quantity of diseases on the rise? Why are we sicker than ever, not just physically, but mentally? As we've advanced, we've also found more things to diagnose.
Yeah, really great statement there.
Yeah, I think it's difficult pill to swallow for certain people, but I think it's just a very common sense question. Is if so advanced in modern medicine, why are the statistics proven that we're actually have more problems now? Right. So I'm kind of going a little bit in a roundabout way here, but we'll come back. So who wins in this model, our current medical model? Like, who's really winning in this model? not you. Okay.
Yeah.
So, just some stats. Healthcare profit pools were estimated to grow at a 7% CAGR from 583 billion in 2022 to 819 billion in 2025. The pharmaceutical market in 2023 saw continued growth in biologics and specialty drugs, accounting for more than half of the total market. Medicare spending was projected to grow from 944 billion in 2022. Everything is just exploding. This is just obvious. And it's dangerous when power is being wielded in this direction. And money, it's just very dangerous in terms of true health and incentivizing wellness when there's this much power and money connected to it. This is just common sense. And as I had to put this beautiful picture of these beautiful people because I need to be very clear is that I don't dislike doctors. Doctors and healthcare providers, from nurses to whomever, many of them have helped me greatly along my journey. But they live in a different realm than the aggregate patient population. If somebody's really struggling, they go to med school, they learn, they're educated in academia a certain way. And it's hard for them to break out of that culture bubble when you've been trained in all of your providers and buddies, and then you can get very jaded. They're very overworked. They can be undervalued themselves. And then what starts to happen, I think, is a process of becoming jaded, is that I have 2,000 patients and, I don't even have to see a patient. I can just look at their blood work and know what's going on. We started to lose the ability to see each human for really who they are every time they come in. It doesn't matter how many times you've seen somebody with kidney disease. You need to keep your eyes fresh for transformation. If you're just pinning a label or an experience that you've seen on all of your patients and project that same thing to happen on this patient coming in with kidney disease, well, guess what? That's probably going to turn out to be a self-fulfilling prophecy that maybe you contributed to as the healthcare provider.
It's such a great point. And I'm going to side note you here because I did a testimonial interview yesterday with one of our community called Liddy, and she was on dialysis for 2 years, and her nephrologist decided she was going to enroll her in a trial to come off dialysis. And it took a while, and she joined the Kidney Coach community and things like that, but she came off dialysis. And in talking to her yesterday, it was a combination because that nephrologist was so convinced that he could get her off dialysis. And so he entrained that into her from the get-go. And so then he said, I don't think I can. Actually, your numbers aren't going to go. But because he'd said to her for a year, no, this is going to happen, she was like, no, you're wrong. Your original thought was right. And, I would like to think that some of the Kidney Coach helped as well. But back to your point, I think the fact that a medical professional had sat down and said, you're just going to be part of this trial and I think we can get you off, was so powerful for her in her journey, versus the flip side, which is what the bulk of our kidney disease patients are told, that once you go on dialysis, you won't, unless you're having a transplant, you won't come off. And so to your point, the power of the words, seeing the patient and everything that you say to them just plays such an important role and is so impactful that I think that medical professionals forget the importance of that. So to highlight your point, I completely agree.
Yeah, I think that's amazing about the woman that you were talking about. Brave and amazing. And it really, really highlights the power of the healthy, incentivized patient-provider relationship. And, I just have to tell you that I've told you recently that I've left a lot of my work within the system and what the final straw is I had a PhD who worked in and around the transplant community, and she kept pressing me on why certain patients were activated or really a part of their empowerment process, and why were so many patients not empowered. And she kept drilling me on this. Why aren't patients empowered? Why aren't, and at some point I just said to her, if you cannot see that more than half of that patient's empowerment is from the provider, then we no longer are in resonance to work together, because that's really truly what it is. It's a healing occurs in relationship, in right relationship. So I think that the more we bring attention to the power of healing, when you're in the right community with the right support, with people who believe in you, I'm not saying it's always going to happen, but it's going to significantly change the way we do everything. And then protocols change, research changes, this finely oiled machine where we can get patients in and out in 10 minutes. It deconstructs the entire model. So I can't imagine that this would go down easy, but the most important thing that any patient can always do is you got to try to find a provider in this system who almost has something to prove in a positive way. Sadly, that's where it is. It's almost like the negative ego can keep somebody stuck in disempowerment, but a provider ego that wants to prove something and really wants to do things right, they will fight. They aren't apathetic. They still have energy to fight for your healing process, and they have the time to monitor you in that way and not just pigeonhole you in the protocols of, when you can control everybody's medicine and their whole process, it's not as much time and effort from you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So back to these providers, I just wanted to bring this up because, again, I think this is important to say. I love this word. It's called nescience. And nescience is defined as the state of not knowing or a lack of knowledge about something. It refers to ignorance or unawareness in a formal context, emphasizing the absence of understanding or information regarding a particular subject or situation. So very often, when we talk about holistic health and healing and the troubles within the Western medical model, it can get negative really quick. And I do believe that there are a handful of willfully ignorant and egoic providers. They definitely exist. I think a lot of them are in a state of nescience. They just don't know what they don't know. They're just literally taught one way in the system. They do what their colleagues do. They don't feel comfortable or safe. They are afraid to go out of the box for their own mindset or legality or their own fear. I find that a lot of providers project their own fear onto the patient. This has happened to me many times where I'll go in and I'm a brave, empowered patient. And it's like if I don't know the provider, the amount of projected fear with my history, right, is like, I feel like I'm, in karate, like dodging all the negativity that they're trying to project onto me,
Yeah.
So I think that this, we have to change, we have to create and cultivate and sustain brave providers. We can't schedule them to the degree or have them siloed to the point where they aren't courageous to be brave with their patients anymore, and they've become apathetic. They've missed the mark again. So here we go. Are you still there, Fiona?
Oh, there you are. You're back again. Keep going.
Okay.
I just
okay.
I hit pause where you disappeared.
Okay, disappeared for a second. Okay, so the modern healthcare system, I believe, diminishes opportunities to heal holistically. And often we settle for that because we're afraid and we want to feel better. And we want to know that we're okay. We're going to live, we're going to survive. And very often the truth is that we want the quickest fix possible. That is true, right? Now, obviously, if you got an arm cut off, it's an emergency, you got to, but I think it's important that we acknowledge as patients and humans that when we don't feel good, we do want to get out of it as soon as possible. Okay. That's why the modern healthcare system works, because they're a fix-it model. They're just quick solution, fix it, drug, pill model. But the truth is that holistic healing is addressing the whole complexity of the person. And holistic healing never stops. Holistic healing is your life. It's a lifestyle, right? So holistic healing is an approach to health and wellness that considers the whole person, mind, body, spirit, emotions, and the quest for optimal well-being. So rather than focusing on specific systems or diseases, holistic healing aims to address the root causes by examining the interconnectedness of various aspects of a person's life. This is the gold in holistic healing, but it's not a quick fix. It's not a shotgun wedding, but it's something that is so incredibly transformational if you just lean into it when it feels uncomfortable. And it's really truly about not just empowerment, but really creating the healthy relationship with you. So I'm bringing up the COVID word here. So COVID has exposed a lot in healthcare, at least here in the West. I'm sure where you are too.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you would agree that it really just exposed a pre-existing condition of the system. The system was already spinning out of control, running on empty, verges of burnout. It was there, but it was just being held together by, it's like a house of cards, and wind came and blew in. So we have record numbers of illness, not just with our patient populations now, but new record numbers of burnout and dissatisfaction and exodus in healthcare provider populations. So what does this mean for us all? It means we're finally coming to the realization that health is beyond our lab tests. This is a win for holistic healing. So I've seen more record numbers of providers that I've followed on YouTube throughout the COVID epidemic talking about long COVID and certain diseases and POTS and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, all of these things coming up. I'm now seeing physicians talking about vagus nerve and holistic therapy. So we've all been here and we've been waiting. And it took something like this for, I believe, us to begin to wake up. I think we're still divided, but I think that there's something happening for sure.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. So illness as communication, your body speaks. This is something that I love to promote, is that can you learn the language of the nuances and the subtleties of your body before it's too late? Can we start to learn that actually our feeling states are trying to send us messages, and to honor those feelings instead of repressing them? So this is really what I love to do now, is helping people to get in touch with their feelings about their body and try to learn the language that their body is trying to speak to them. These kind of like decoding these deeper hidden messages of the body. I really love that. So our conventional narrative overlooks the potential for more nuanced and empowering approach to illness. It aims to fix, not heal. We already talked about that. In my opinion, this is true empowerment, is asking the deeper questions and embracing the opportunity for spiritual and personal growth within our illness experience. Your illness reveals your deepest layers of your true self if you allow the mystery to unfold. Oh,
there we are.
So this is me.
Wow. Wouldn't have even picked that till you said that.
That picture is myself when I was trying to survive. I felt so alone. I felt afraid. I had no idea. I just had no idea. I was so lost. I had no idea what was going on. I was just trying to look happy for other people. And I thought I was dying. I was dying. I was literally dying. Right. And it wasn't just my transplant that cultivated the girl in the other picture with the white vest on, which is me, helping other patients now. See, that's a really full circle experience.
Mm.
So for me in that journey, what it took was, yes, I needed the transplant, but I can't tell you how much of my journey was about healing my emotions, listening to my feelings, creating a relationship with my inner state, really developing inner strength, facing myself, leaning in when it felt hard, not running away all the time when things don't feel good. I was a classic runner. Something didn't feel good. See ya. I'm out of here. I'm leaving. This don't feel right. Bye. You're not right for me. This ain't right. So learning how to mature in life and to understand that life can be very uncomfortable and to really lean into it and embrace and forgive and communicate and speak my truth. And at the end of the day, recognize what my core blocks are. And for me personally, my core wound is self-worth. And if I look back to my original illness when this started, was I don't feel good enough and worthy to do that which I love to do because now I'm sick. So it really, I was looking at it incorrectly. How I perceive my story is that God, my higher belief, understood the nature of what I wanted to do for my life and my greatest skills involved in health and healing. So he said, wow, you're really educated, but if I give you this experience, you're really going to get it. You're going to be amazing.
Yeah.
You see? But I wasn't permitting myself to look at that the whole entire time. And even throughout my medical experience, it was, there's something wrong with you and we have to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest
Chop a part of you out.
Cut out a whole half of you.
Mm-hmm.
A whole half of you, which is about my transformation and the gift within my illness and who I've become because of it. It's just none of that. It's just it's a conquering mentality. So yeah, that's my message, is that navigating your illness is a life experience. You are not your illness, but your illness may be trying to communicate something to you that is going to contribute to a conscious health journey where your mind, body, and soul can find deeper meaning and purpose in your life. So that is it for today.
You know, I can really attest to a lot of that, you know, the failure piece, which I think a lot of people feel, that then, you know, I went through, like you early on, and fired every neurologist that was just like, you'll end up in a wheelchair in like a couple of years. And I'm like, wow, really? How do we know that? You don't know that. That's actually not what the stats say. So, you know, I agree. It's really about that nocebo effect and the power of that, the placebo effect, and then who you surround yourself with, and how do you set yourself up for optimal long-term healing, not just from your disease, but everything that you spoke about. And I think that's something that's in the forefront of my mind now is this healing to me, does this support that journey? And if it doesn't, unfortunately, I think that's one of the things that dis-ease gives you, is you have a greater sense of discernment about what does and doesn't belong in your life, because you just don't have the bandwidth that maybe someone without a chronic disease does. And that is actually, like you've mentioned, there's a lot of blessing in that, because your tolerance for things that are inauthentic to who you are is shortened, and you get heightened in being able to see it. Yeah, I think if you've sat down and decided and signed up for this journey, I think you and I have signed up for whatever this is. Yeah, so I really appreciate your views and your journey and what you've been through and how you've navigated, and look where you are now. Do you know what I mean? Like you said, that, you know, and Liddy was saying this yesterday, the person I mentioned before, about her journey as well, and she's now doing patient advocate stuff and supporting people that have gone through that as well. And I think it's a true gift when you can give back into the community about what you've been through, because it's no longer defining you and you're getting to rewrite the journey from other people from a properly lived, embodied experience. And that's priceless. I think
it is priceless. I think one thing to note about it is, like the woman, her name is Lydia.
Liddy, yeah.
Liddy. Like Liddy's situation isn't the norm yet.
No,
So
far from.
Yeah, the important thing to remember is that this is your life and your journey, and cultivating the discernment. And like you said, please don't just fall into the normal routine. I know it's scary, but take the time to really find the people who are going to support you and challenge you to remember how strong that you are, which isn't always the nice, pretty thing, right? So we can get support where we're very disempowered. So be very aware that you want to support yourself with people who are going to love you, acknowledge your situation, but also try to empower you. And talking about this form of health and healing where you're constantly reclaiming more agency and understanding that it's your journey. Actually, in who I am, I've become a little bit of a pariah as a patient. So although it is really important to give back, I still don't feel fully welcomed in the traditional community, because I'm actually pulling myself back from the codependency of the system. And really now I understand when I need to be there, I understand very clearly what I have to do, but I don't overly participate, which sometimes is seen as whatever somebody may assume about me. But it's your journey in your life. And until we are able to cultivate a medical system, if we are, that has this relationship style where they encourage agency and healing and actually being a part of the system as little as possible, which I think would be the proper way. You're going to be going against the grain a little bit, and you're, Liddy and people who do work like myself, I think are very important in the world of healthcare right now, as we are making these shifts in the system and in providership and how we teach doctors. So use your voice. If you've got something to say, don't be afraid to say it if it's helped you, because it's easier to stay silent, and it's easier for people to control the narrative if you don't speak up.
Yeah, it's such a great point. Yeah. And back to a point you made much earlier, is people don't know what they don't know. And there's a lot of stuff that healthcare providers don't know because they've been funneled, and that's not a criticism, but there is so much good research coming out now about everything that you've spoken about, and the power of the nocebo and the spoken word and the healing relationship, that we can't keep ignoring this sort of stuff, and we can't keep churning patients through a machine that isn't fixing the problem. Back to your original slide, which is chronic healthcare is getting worse. So what are we doing wrong? Because we've got more drugs, we've got more technology, but that is not changing. So there is something deeply sick, for want of a better word, and wrong with the system if it's not actually achieving the goals it should have set out to do in the first place. So something fundamental needs to shift so we can move away from people moving towards chronic disease.
Yeah. I have one quick nuance to share with you. I just heard this right before our interview. I thought it was so interesting. And it was a man who specialized in dream symbology. And what he was saying that was, in dreams, the ultimate full circle experience. He actually used a provider and a patient as an example. So that's why I thought it was so relevant to share. He said, in an ultimate dream experience, even if you're not really aware of what's going on or what the dream is symbolizing, he said, in a complete experience, I'll tell you exactly what he said, which isn't very, very graceful, but this is what he said. He said, did you ever have a dream where you have a pimple on your face? And he said, you see that you have a pimple, and then you pop your pimple and you wake up. And he said the profoundness of that very simple dream is that you are the provider, you're the patient and the provider, or the broken and the healed in the same dream. And he said that's actually the ultimate universal expression of our journey in life, is that you understand that you are the patient and the healer together.
I love that.
And I think that that's where we're headed, is that we have to understand and give patients more credit for them to empower themselves to realize their own power in self-healing. And that doesn't always mean that they're not going to need a kidney transplant, but it certainly may mean that they realize and empower themselves to be that self-healer, along with just not someone who needs to be taken care of.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a great summary, and such a great simple nuance in the dream, but it's the extent of how it really is. We have to become our own greatest healers, and no one knows us better than we do, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah.
So
the clarion call is for the doctors. The clarion call is for the doctors to start to feel confident to pull back a bit. And that is what's going to permit, because they're the authority in the current model. So just like in our world right now, if the authority doesn't pull back, or you don't question the authority, they're not going to hand over that power. So back to the doctor who I said to you was saying, well, how do I empower patients? How do I empower patients? It's about the provider having trust and working with the patient like a coach. So there's not so much hierarchy and authority that pigeonholes the patient into the role of disempowered.
I love that. And I think trust is such a key word there, because the more trust that's shielded and handed to the patient, the more the patient's likely to trust themselves and their own bodies. And then we can listen to their own inner wisdom that is always there. So I love that. Stephanie, if anyone wants to work with you, which you do coaching, and you definitely do play a very important key role in mentorship and support of anyone that's just going through either a new diagnosis and wanting to understand more about chronic kidney disease, is on or heading towards dialysis and really wants to feel empowered to navigate the system to get the most out of what can be a very stressful journey, or is going through transplant and wants to really understand how to properly care before, during, and after the transplant. It's not just, as you said in your first one, here you go, kid, here's your transplant, go and live your life. It's like, no, how do I really take deep inner healing for my transplant and make sure that this transplant sticks and is the best healthy outcome for me? I'll put the link in below. So Stephanie does offer one-on-one coaching with all of that sort of stuff and support. And she's an amazing advocate to have in your team when it comes to all of these sort of things, to have someone to do everything that she just spoke about, that also has walked the journey and has come out the other side a strong, empowered woman who knows herself, which I think is the aim of the game when it comes to living. It's that matrix thing, know thyself, right? That's the aim of the game. And I think you're well and truly on that journey from everything that you've been through. I always love chatting to you and being in your very strong feminine power and clarity, and just deep compassion and understanding for those, and the want and love to support those going through the journey. I think it's beautiful. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I'm just happy to be here with you, and so grateful for the work that you're doing. And I found, as we've discussed before, I found you several years ago. I live here in America, and we definitely need your work. So thank you so much for being that holistic health space for our entire kidney community.
Well, as I've said too, it's great to have you on board with that. You feel like you complete our team, so it's really great. So if you want to know more about what we do, as Stephanie just mentioned, head to www.kidneycoach.com. You'll see a whole pile of free resources there. Make sure you have a look through all of our YouTube videos. It's a wealth of information there, from lots of interviews with Stephanie to a whole pile of amazing doctors. And it's not just, we've got doctors and advocates that are in this field as well saying the same sort of thing. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. That way you'll get notified anytime we put up more information. And you can also head to our Facebook page. If there's any specific topics that you would like Stephanie to talk about with her wealth of knowledge, please put it in the comments below and I will make sure that we do that. We will definitely have Stephanie back. And there'll be a link below if you'd like to book in a coaching call with her to get some clarity around your kidney journey. Stephanie, thank you as always. And to anyone listening, thank you for being part of our community. We hope that you hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye.